All of us have problems and challenges from time to time, and it is vitally important that we not only understand them, but we understand how they got into our lives, and then learn how to deal with them on a positive, productive, fulfilling basis. To begin this lesson, I want to give you some background which will help us to understand. At Unity Village, which is located just a little bit outside of Kansas City, Missouri, we have many different departments there, such as USRS, which stands for Unity School for Religious Studies. That's where we send people to go to study to become licensed Unity teachers and counselors. We have a large publishing house there, a printing company, Silent Unity, which has been our prayer service for about 100 years. We have the Association of Unity Churches, of which this church is a member. And of course, we have our ministerial school. Now, as a part of the ministerial school, we have what we call the L&O Committee, which stands for Licensing and Ordination Committee. And it is their responsibility to orally check these students out, the ministerial candidates. The committee is made up of many ministers from the field. And they check these ministerial candidates out about 4 times during the 2-year study. This, of course, is done in order to see how the candidates are progressing in their work. On one of these occasions, a ministerial candidate came before the committee, and the questioning went something like this. One minister asked the candidate, "Do you believe in the law of mind action?" Well, the candidate looked around, thought for a moment. He said he knew that this was a basic principle of unity. And so he said, "Yes, of course I believe in the law of mind action. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind." So the next question came from the panel. "Do you believe that Jesus always held loving thoughts?" Well, the candidate thought for a moment, and he had been through a Sunday school experience as a child, and he remembered that Jesus had always loving thoughts. So he said, "Of course, I believe that Jesus always had loving thoughts." Well, now he was trapped, because here came the $64 question. If you believe in the law of mind action, that thoughts held in mind produce after their kind, and if you believe that Jesus always had loving thoughts, then how come Jesus was always surrounded with unloving people and unloving circumstances? Good question, isn't it? Well, the candidates kind of went back on that one a little bit, thought for a moment, looked at all the panel and smiled and said, I don't think I can answer that one. But then a minister that had been in the field for about 40 years, he said, within each one of us is a cosmic clock. And it has a pendulum that swings back and forth, but it doesn't go tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. It goes need for, ability to. Need for, ability to. Need for, ability to. What it means is whatever you and I are experiencing in our life right now, you and I have a need for that, but we also have the power and the ability to rise above and overcome. This may shock many of you, but your soul and my soul chooses these experiences to help us have an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to change. Obviously, most of us would not choose some of the experiences we go through, not consciously anyway. Jesus had many, many experiences, and these were all culminated in the cross experience. But Jesus always demonstrated the power within to rise above, to conquer. Jesus was not the exception. Jesus was and is the perfect example of how God's power can flow through man, through us, through you. Regardless of what you are currently experiencing, you or I, we have a need for, but we also have the ability and the power to rise above, to move up to new levels of consciousness, of understanding. And we can begin to step out into a world of light and love. As you know, when we went to school, we learned by being given problems to solve. It's still the best method of learning. It's still used today in our educational system because it provides the proper practice that we need in order to learn. So don't shy away from challenges. Rather, pray this prayer. Thank you, Father, for the evidence of thy love for me, for through this means do I grow. There are times when we have challenges, physical challenges, family challenges, financial challenges, social challenges, mental challenges, corporate challenges, business challenges, yes, and even church challenges. We may say, God, why have you done this to me? What have I done to deserve all of this? It's not really important why our soul has chosen for us. The thing we need to know is need for, ability to. Need for, ability to. In John 16:33, Jesus said this, in this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. You see, the important thing is not that we have tribulation, but the important thing is how we handle the challenge, how we handle the tribulation, and the key to handling it is our attitude. Did you know that there are 5 levels to a problem? Let's take a look at these 5 levels, as it will help us understand how we can change our attitude toward many of the challenges that we find in our lives. The lowest level of a problem is a problem, and we're kind of bent over with the heavy load of it, and we cannot see any end to it. But if we move up a little bit in consciousness, in thought and feeling, we can see it as a challenge. Now that means we still have the problem, but we can see a light at the end of the tunnel. So as we move up a little higher in consciousness, we see it as a wonderful opportunity for us to learn, to grow, and to change, because that's why it's in our life. So we move up to the 4th level, which is a privilege. It's a privilege to have this opportunity, because that's how we grow. The 5th level is it's a blessing. And in every challenge that you and I have, there is a wonderful blessing if we will but look for it, if we will be open and receptive, if we will begin to raise our consciousness up to little higher levels. I would like to read you the Daily Word from August 13th, 1985. The word was strength and comfort. I never need feel alone, for God is always with me. When I consciously realize my oneness with God, I am comforted, I am strengthened through any challenge, through any change, through any experience that requires me to grow to a higher level of understanding. Life is eternal, and I find comfort in knowing this truth for myself and for my loved ones. If a dear one is no longer a part of my life, I remind myself that all the good that we experience together is still a part of me, as warm memories, as goals achieved, as challenges met and overcome, as love felt and shared. This dear one remains always an eternal part of me. God is within to comfort me anywhere, anytime. God is within to strengthen me with his sustaining strength. For many of us, when we first embraced the unity teachings, we were absolutely thrilled to begin to demonstrate some of the truth of God and demonstrate it in our everyday life. All of us demonstrating healings of one kind or another. Bodily healings, financial healings, human relationship healings, and new good experienced in our life. And then we began to seriously study, to learn and use the principles of life, the principles of truth that help us to grow and learn. But then a curious thing begins to happen. After a period of time of our studying, we began to attract experiences into our life that were unlike the nature of God. How can this be? If we are faithfully learning truth principles and putting them into practice in our lives every day, then how come we have to deal with the appearances of fear, lack, limitation, death, disease, broken human relationships, conditions and circumstances totally unlike the perfect nature of God? You see what is happening, as in the case of Jesus Christ, the attainment of a higher consciousness is generally followed by a testing period to give you and me the opportunity to prove that we have accepted and can use the illumination that we have received. The individual consciousness must be tested. It must be disciplined before it can become master of our thought. Need for, ability to. Need for, ability to. James Allen, in his book, As a Man Thinketh, put it this way: mind is the master power that molds and makes, and man is mind, and evermore he takes the tool of thought, and shaping what he wills, brings forth 1,000 joys, 1,000 ills. He thinks in secret, and it comes to pass that environment out here is but his looking glass. My wife Abby and I have a good friend who today is a national sales director of Mary Kay Cosmetics, as my wife Abby is. This is a picture of her. Maybe can't see it too well. She was featured on the cover of Scene magazine March 14th, 1982. Her name is Rena Tarbett. Rena has been and is today a fabulous success in her business. But her story will give you an idea of how to understand and deal with challenges in your life. One day in 1975, Rena experienced and found a lump in her breast. A mastectomy was performed, and the doctors were sure that they had gotten everything. 4 years later, another lump appeared in the other breast, and another mastectomy was performed. And after this mastectomy, she began to experience a lot of pain in her body. She returned to the hospital for tests and was sitting alone when the radiologist came out, and he said to her, "I don't know how you've been walking around. The cancer is in all of your bones, and your sternum is all but disintegrated." Well, Rena said, "When I first started this business, I wanted guarantees. I wanted to know that if I did this and this and this, that I'd be okay. But life doesn't work that way. So sure, there are a lot of fears, but I believe that the good Lord is using me to touch a lot of lives. And she has touched a lot of lives, thousands of lives of women who write to her, call her with the same problem, same challenge. And she has said that without this experience, she would never touch these lives in this way and help them. Need for, ability to. She said, I have a need for this, but with God, I have the power to rise above and conquer. Rena began making trips to Houston, to MD Anderson. And while she was there, she told the doctor, she said, there's something that I really don't understand. And he said, well, what is it? She said, everybody that's on chemotherapy loses weight. And she said, I've gained. She said, I thought at least I'd get a skinny body out of this. The doctor told me something that has lived with me ever since, she said. MD Anderson is kind of a depressing place. Patients have given up, and a lot of the women won't even wear wigs, even after they've lost their hair. She said, I would prance in all dressed up and made up. Cancer was a full-time project for them. But she said, I tried to work the cancer in and around my more important things of life. A lot of times I'd say, well, how are you, Rena? And she said, I'm great. She said, I just don't have a lot of time to give this cancer stuff. Her doctor said, Rena, they are dying with cancer. You are living with it. You see, Rena saw the opportunity in her challenge, and she made the most of it. She counted it a privilege to be able to help thousands of women, to give them hope, encouragement, and faith. And we have a lady in this church right now that's doing the same thing. Had cancer, has been healed through prayer and faith. And now she's reaching out to help others. That's the unity way. All during Rena's battle with cancer, she remained the top producer for Mary Kay Cosmetics. And today she is in total remission, simply because she just didn't have much time to give it. That's attitude. Moving up. Need for, ability to. What about the current conflicts that we have in our world? But you see, these conflicts are wonderful opportunities for you and me to radiate out God's love out into our world. And we can become part of the solution instead of part of the problem. If we're radiating out hate and resentment, we're part of the problem, folks. And you can write that one on the wall. Remember this, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Any conflict or challenge that you and I have right now, it is our teacher. And it is a blessed, wonderful opportunity to express love, to heal, to bring peace into the world in which you and I live. I can think of many who have overcome challenges of many different kinds. There was a baby boy born in London many years ago. This boy was born blind. His mother was a piano teacher, and she taught him to play the piano. And in World War II, he got a little notoriety playing in some of the pubs in London. In 1946, he arrived in New York completely broke. In 1949, he wrote September in the Rain and Lullaby of Birdland. And many of you would recognize the name of George Shearing. He had a need to start over, but he also had the ability and the power within him to rise above whatever challenge he felt he had and to bring some beautiful music into the world. Sometimes we all have a need to start over, an experience chosen by our soul for growth and change. The promise is, the truth is, that you and I have that power. We have the ability to overcome. 1 John 4:4 says this, "But you are of God, little children, and have overcome them, for greater is he that is within you than he that is in the world." When challenges come into our lives, like we sometimes consciously or unconsciously do the very thing that bind us to the problem, and therefore delay our rising above and moving out of that lower thought, that lower consciousness. One of our chief problems is holding on. Letting go brings us beautiful, amazingly, changes in our life. When we get a sense of letting go, a sense of inner peace, that's really all that we really need. Most of our challenges are bound to us by the hold that we have on them. We hold on to resentment, hate. We hold on to fear for some reason or other. I know of no better way to illustrate this than a story that Eric Butterworth tells quite frequently, and he's a Unity minister in New York City. Most of you know that. But he has this story which tells us about the dangers of holding on. It's the story of the men who go to Africa to capture monkeys for the zoos and the research societies of America. Now, they have a very interesting technique. They provide a very heavy bottle with a long, narrow neck, and the bottle is too heavy for a monkey to pick up. They put sweet-smelling nuts into the bottle and then lay the bottle on the jungle floor. And then they go back to camp and play cards or whatever else that they do. When they come back later that day, they have all the monkeys they want. The monkeys are trapped. They're unharmed. You see, the monkey comes up and he has a certain amount of intelligence. He sees the nuts in the bottle. He sniffs around and they're sweet-smelling nuts, just what he wants. And he sees that by reaching in through the neck of the bottle that he can grab that prize. And so he reaches in and he pushes and squeezes down that long neck, reaches in the bottle and grabs the nuts. He's trapped. No way he can get away, according to his monkey philosophy, because he has the nuts and he's not going to let them go. As long as he holds on to the nuts, his fist is too large and it cannot come out of the bottle. So he's there. When the men come to pick him up, he is screaming, crying, and chattering and wondering what happened. Well, they made a monkey out of him. And of course we say, well, that's because he has a monkey's consciousness. But how often does life make a monkey out of us? We hold on to the very things that are holding us back. Fear, resentment, hate, limitation, anxiety, and all the rest. And figuratively, if not literally, we carry around the heavy bottle and we feel sorry for ourselves. And we seek help or pity, I guess it's more pity, from everyone around us and even God, because we simply will not let go of the bottle. Dr. Don used to call that the plum syndrome, P-L-O-M. Poor little old me. Anybody been there besides me? I thought I saw you there. The monkey was always a free monkey, but he was bound by his faulty evaluation of himself. At any time, he could say to his hand, "Open," and he would have been freed. And you and I have the power to say no ourselves, to say no and let go of fear, resentment, worry, regret. Let it all go. Anytime you feel that life has made a monkey out of you, you have the power to let go and get into the divine flow of God, of God's good. If you will just remember this, for all of us have some tribulations, some trials, challenges, and difficulties to overcome, to rise above. But you and I have that wonderful inner power to conquer. I'd like to share with you a little poem that is simply called "Let Go and Let God." As children bring their broken toys in tears for us to mend, I brought my broken dreams to God because He was my friend. But then instead of leaving Him in peace to work alone, I hung around and tried to help with ways that were my own. At last I snatched them back and cried, "How could you be so slow?" "My child," God said, "what could I do? You never did let go." Our church right now has a marvelous opportunity to begin at the point to which Reverend Ralph has brought us to and move ahead on a bright path that will lead this church into all that it can be and all that it will be. If God be for us, who can be against us? So the apostle said. We are united together to move forward into the sunshine of God's love. God bless you. Thank you.